Alright, guys, it's midnight here, but the show must go on. We need to do it, and we need to do it now. So, things have taken a really hilarious turn in this trade war. Now, in our previous video, we said confidently that US threats didn't have a leg to stand on. China holds the stronger hand. And here's the truth: Chinese leverage is strong, especially when it comes to US industries. Trump wants high tech and advanced production coming back to the United States, and this includes EVs and semiconductors. But who has an abundance of global supply? It's China. US supply is decades from coming online, if ever. Now, American industries, they buy 70% of their rare earth compounds from China. For Pacific elements like scandium, the dependence is 100%. And that is a critical input for magnets used even in the defense industry. Now, even if Trump manages to secure all of Japan's supply, prices will still shoot through the roof for US importers. If 70% of the market blockades you, you'll be paying through the nose. The problem with the administration is not understanding their words have very big effects on markets. Now, US stocks crashed by over 4% last week. We all saw that disaster. But now markets are recovering, but a lot of people they already got burned. Suddenly now we have a reversal and all the candlesticks they're going green again. It only means one thing: Trump and friends are starting to panic. And Trump did a Taco Tuesday on a Monday. Now Trump and JD Vance are now opening a door to settle things with China. They want to do a deal to quell all the trade tensions. JD Vance is calling on Beijing to choose the path of reason, which is really fresh. Now, we know who started the global trade war and escalated a whole host of curbs against Chinese AI tech. We even have the US trying to corner Chinese trade vessels on the high seas as well. And now that China is hitting back, the administration, they have lost their minds. At least right now, Trump realizes that he has overplayed his hand and he's masking it with a big dose of bravado and projection. And this is what the President of the United States wrote. Highly respected President Xi had a bad moment. He doesn't want depression for his country, and neither do I. The USA wants to help China and not hurt it. And that's why we are officially in the twilight zone. Now imagine you're Beijing and you see this popping up. You see how unstable the US really is. Your best option is to continue decoupling. While Trump is having fun on social media, you'll get busy with the real stuff. You'll corner more supply chains. You'll accelerate your chip industries and keep de-dollarizing the world. And it's important we understand the leverage China has. Rare earths is just one key aspect, and we covered it extensively in our previous video. You can't make advanced missiles or affordable chips without it, and that alone is enough to cripple US factories. Even the Koreans, Taiwanese, or Japanese won't relocate production to the US. But the more immediate leverage China has is in US farm exports. Now, in September, Chinese soy imports just hit a new record for the month. Beijing imported nearly 13 million tons without touching any US soybeans. All of Chinese demand is being mainly fulfilled by Brazil and Argentina to a lesser degree. They have contracts with Latin America, which actually strengthens Chinese influence there as well. As a result, we have the price of soy in the US fall. This is very bad for farmers who need to maximize their revenue, especially when costs are just so high. Now, pricing is really crucial here. If farmers have to sell below the cost of production, it's virtually unsustainable. Two things will happen: either widespread closure of commercial farms, or Trump will have to step in. And if Argentina manages to get $20 billion in economic support, Trump will have to bail out US farmers. There's no other choice. And this bailout could last for a very long time, adding even more burden on the US national debt. Now, in the first trade war from 2018 to 2019, China imported less than 4 million tons of soy in total. But in 2025, the amount is zero. Literally nothing was bought by the Chinese. And this could drag on for 3 more years. 2025 could just be the start. As a result, in his first term, Trump had to issue a $28 billion bailout to the farmers. Farmers earning less than 900 grand a year could apply and access this aid. Now, how much will the new farmers bailout cost? It could be double or even triple the amount, which isn't a stretch to imagine. There are two big issues facing US industries today. They are pervasive. Now, tariffs are raising the cost for everything from tractors to simple machinery tools. Prices are going up. And will Trump give US farmers a tax holiday or just throw cash at them? He will have to bail them out somehow, and either way, the deficit is going to take a hit. And here are some of the most grown US crops, and all of them are facing losses per acre. Now, cotton is the worst, hitting nearly $400 losses per acre. And this is negative margins. In other words, farmers are losing money. For soybeans, the losses are over 110 per acre. And now that Chinese demand has disappeared, selling prices are plunging. So the losses are just going to compound further and further. The economics is simply horrible here. The second issue is interest rates. And we know the Fed is starting to cut rates. But when farmers borrow money, they do it for the long term, anywhere from 2 to 5 years to finance their crop cycles. But some can stretch for decades. Interest payments for farmers have reached an insane $33 billion in 2025, and that's 7% of all costs. Interest alone is making US farm exports uncompetitive. And it's even before adding in the chaos from Trump's tariffs and China not buying US supplies. Farmers are getting squeezed with rising costs and declining revenues. So it's not that surprising that Trump had to backtrack hard. There's no other reasonable avenue left. The White House cannot risk both US farmers getting clobbered plus high-tech industries collapsing all at the same time. And there will be a double whammy that will flip the entire trade war on its head. If industries can't reshore to the US because of cost pressures, what was the point of this global tariff madness in the first place? So there's a lot of cognitive dissonance going on in Washington. They don't know if they're coming or they're going. And let's recall what JD Vance said in the past.
We will protect the wages of American workers and stop the Chinese Communist Party from building their middle class on the backs of American citizens.
Well, China is doing as he wished. They are now feeding their middle class without the help of US farm workers. But look what is happening. We have an entire generation of farmers getting decimated. And we said from day one of the trade war, you might be the US, but the global economy is much bigger. If the world refuses to buy your stuff, industries will collapse. But yet JD Vance is confident that the US will win any confrontation. Now we are back to the good old deck of cards, but who really holds the cards here?
I'll be honest with you, Maria, it's going to be a delicate dance. And a lot of it is going to depend on how the Chinese respond. If they respond in a highly aggressive manner, I guarantee you the President of the United States has far more cards than the People's Republic of China. If, however, they're willing to be reasonable, then Donald Trump is always willing to be a reasonable negotiator. We're going to find out a lot in the weeks to come about whether China wants to start a trade war with us or whether they actually want to be reasonable. I hope they choose the path of reason. The President of the United States is going to defend America regardless.
Here's my issue. The US does hold some cards, but they're all backfiring in real time. The US dollar was one such card, but the moment Biden weaponized it, it was game over. The other cards also depend on the stability of this hyper-financialized economy. But it's a really unstable Jenga tower just waiting to collapse at the slightest breeze. Now, China's cards, however, are really solid. It's based on real-world supply chains that were built decades in advance. You can't replace that in just a couple of months. Well, China is now flexing hard with a new export control. Beijing has imposed curbs on lithium-ion battery exports and its related equipment. And the agenda is simple: protect Chinese innovation and make it hell for the G7, including the US, to establish alternatives. Now, where did China learn this from? From Trump's own semiconductor curbs themselves. When it comes to chips, China is just a few years away from catching up. They have all the brain power, financing, and raw materials to speed up R&D, so it's just going to be a matter of time. However, the same cannot be said for US battery industries. I mean, we just saw the debacle with the US raids on Hyundai, plants getting delayed months on end. Now, the true issue, however, is how entrenched China is in the entire battery supply chain. There's truly no way to replicate this if Beijing cuts the US off. Now, 80 to 90% of cathodes, anodes, and the cell itself are Chinese made. There's just not enough from South Korea, Japan, and Europe. Importing those will also trigger Trump's tariffs as well. And if China manages to starve the West of critical battery tech, then where does the future of EV lie? Today it's China and tomorrow it will still be China as well. And that's how deep this game of pushback is getting. It's much more impactful than US dollar sanctions. Now that can be bypassed by using bilateral currencies. You cannot create a supply chain from thin air, that's the big difference here. It's impossible to replicate without trillions spent over a decade, and I'm being very, very generous here. And because of these cost advantages, Chinese automakers will be able to crush Western competitors, and that means markets from Europe to Asia will be cornered by the Chinese. Now, sure, Trump can force Americans to buy US made EVs, but that market will get saturated really fast, especially when prices will go through the roof making domestic batteries. Now, within just 2 years, BYD's global EV deliveries have exceeded that of Tesla. In Q3, BYD delivered 580,000 vehicles. Tesla only did 500,000 deliveries, so the difference here is very significant. Now imagine China going all out and doing full battery curbs to US companies. And should that happen, Trump would definitely lose his mind because the cascading effects will be unthinkable. And let's put on our thinking caps for a bit and make a reasonable deduction. What would happen if China turns off the battery taps? Well, it would force the US to build their own battery supply chain at extreme costs. More deficit spending, more bond issuance, and a greater debt burden. Now, amplify this with the tariffs on imports. Suddenly, the financial disaster gets magnified to an insane degree. And that's just one scenario. The other alternative is even easier to imagine. More auto companies will just surrender and they'll shift production to China. Tesla will probably open another gigafactory there because there's nowhere else to go. It's wild, but at least Trump, he's feeling really confident of the tariffs. He keeps repeating how the US is in a stronger position versus the Chinese.
I think we're going to be fine with China. Look, I have a great relationship with President Xi. He's a very tough man. He's a very smart man. He's a great leader for their country. He's a great leader. And I have a great relationship with him. I think we'll get it set. I know what happened. I really understand what happened. And I'm not even saying he's wrong. But then we met him with something much tougher than what he did to us. Again, because of the tariffs, it's much tougher.
Now, I don't know about you, but I think he's off base here by a mile. But this trade war with China has a simple lesson for us all. Don't write a check that you can't cash. It looks bad, people will laugh, and any future checks you write will look very, very suspicious. But let me know what you think. Will China really squeeze the US using batteries? Or will Trump drop his crazy 100% tariff threat for real? Let me know in the comments below. Stay safe. Be sure to smash the like button and subscribe as we navigate through these crazy times.